Somebody asked me the other day if you use a different strategy to talk to a larger group of people than you do to a small group of people. Answer to that question is yes. The larger the group, the more difficult it is for you to make that personal contact with them. And there's a certain point where the group gets very large, 100, 200, 300, and go up from there, that it's almost impossible to make that personal contact. So how do you get your message across to a large group of people? Well, it's a little more difficult than dealing with people one-on-one or groups of 10 or 15, but it's certainly doable. Here's some of the tips I'd give you that I use to help make a successful presentation to a large group of people. First of all, rehearse, 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 rehearse. The last thing in the world you want to have happen is to lose a group's interest. So make sure you have everything scripted, formatted, and ready to go. Keep everything moving. Last thing in the world a large group of people wants is the distortion and distraction of there not being a continuum in thought and word and deed. And oh, by the way, if you're going to use technology, and it's a given that everybody does, please make sure that you know how to use the technology properly, or you have someone there that knows how to use it properly. In the past month or so, I've attended 3 or 4 presentations where at the point someone was going to show a video or do a Corel Draw or PowerPoint presentation, or use a Photoshop, Adobe sort of presentation, the first time they hit the button it didn't work. In today's day and time, that's no longer funny. So your audience sits there and they wait 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, a few minutes. By the time you get it going, the mood you've wanted to create is lost. Now, yes, I know stuff happens. And I know you can set a video ready to go and poof, the darn thing doesn't work. It's happened to me. But the more you rehearse this, you begin to develop a contingency plan. And that contingency plan says, if I can't use any quote-unquote visual aids, what am I going to do? Second thing you have to look at in a large group of people, and it's just as important as keeping things moving because it kind of wraps around this. What's your message? What do you want to get across? Find that message, deliver that message in the quickest, most concise, comfortable way that you can, and then get out. Because in a larger group, first of all, the forum and the format doesn't always allow for questions and answers. And even if it does, trust me, more people are a little more reluctant to get up and ask a question in front of hundreds of people than not. So make sure you get your message across, that when people walk out the door, they know exactly what you wanted them to know. Now, finding out how your message got across in a larger group of people has a little bit more of a challenge to it than it does in a smaller group of people. With a smaller group, you can kind of stand around and talk to people afterwards, kind of do a straw poll on how effective your message was. With a larger group of people beforehand, you might want to come up with a method to assess your effectiveness. It might be go to this web address and click I really love this, or you've got to be out of your mind. If you're in a real sophisticated environment, you can use an electronic voting sort of tool, but something to find out how effective your message was. In a large group of people, follow-up is much, much more important because In the smaller group, once you make the personal contact with somebody, they're going to leave and you've planted the seed and they're going to follow up with you. Now, I'm not saying with a small group don't follow up, but in a larger group, if you got 250, 300 people, it's almost nigh unto impossible for you to make personal contact with every one of those people. What you want to do is find an effective way to gauge how they felt and what they're planning on doing based on the message that you set out. It's a little difficult to be personal. In the case of dealing with a large group of people, I know from time to time I will catch myself making eye contact with the people who are in the center of the room in about the first 3 or 4 rows. It's difficult, especially I've talked to groups of people, 500, 600 people. You can't see all the way to the back of the room or the auditorium. Those people who ended up in the back of the room need to feel just as important. So what you might want to do, again, if the technology is available with a large group, is have it videoed and put up on 2 large screens behind you, one to the right and one to the left. Speaking to a large group of people is also like being in a Broadway play. Your actions are exaggerated, your voice needs to be louder, and oh, by the way, practice with a microphone before you use one. Last thing in the world I want to hear is feedback during your presentation. I'm going to conclude all this by going back to the beginning. Practice, 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 practice. The more effective you are in your presentation, the more effective you will be in getting your message across. Work with aids that you're comfortable with. Find your message, deliver it in the shortest, most concise period of time that's necessary for you to get your message across, and use the technique and technology to make sure everyone's reached. It's a little more challenging to speak to a large group of people than it is a small group. But once you get the hang of it, it's really not that much more difficult. A bit more time consuming, but not that much more difficult. So, you want to know more? You know where to find me. Have a good one.